Here's why I gave Kings of Paradise by Richard Nell a 9 out of 10 on my indie ranking scale. So let's start with immersion, which is the world building, which I gave a 9 out of 10. This author does a really good job of contrasting two very different environments from two different places and characters within this world. On the one hand, you have a frozen wasteland filled with barbarians, and yet, ironically, all of the women are the ones that hold the power in this nation. And on the other hand, you have tropical island kingdoms that has more politics and some of that youthful hope and noble bright aspects to a fantasy novel. Names, which are the characters, get a 10 out of 10 from me. The story focuses on two main point of views. First one is from Ruka, who was my personal favorite, and Kale. Imagine if you took Logan Ninefingers from the Joe Abercrombie series and combined him with Glokta. That's pretty much what you get with Ruka. So incredibly interesting and dynamic character. Very grimdark. Whereas with Kale, he's the one that's from the tropical island. He's like the fourth son of a king, so he's kind of disposable and he kind of has to find his way in the world. So when you get his POV, it's a lot more noble bright, a lot more hopeful. The magic gets a 7 out of 10, and this is because although the magic was interesting, it really doesn't show up until the last 100 pages of the book. So for most of the story, I thought it was like a low fantasy, that it wasn't going to have magic. And I almost would have preferred that, just from an infrastructure perspective, which we'll get to next. So on that note of infrastructure, I gave it a 9 out of 10. Because although it had a rushed ending, in my opinion, that really I think could have worked better as the beginning of a book 2, I still really enjoyed the overall premise and the arcs of all the characters, and the flow of the book I felt like had really good pacing and kept me engaged the whole time. And my enjoyment was a 10 out of 10. I think that this was probably my favorite book of the year so far. I loved the characters, I loved the world, it was an incredibly enjoyable experience. If you haven't read Kings of Paradise, I highly recommend you check it out and give it a read.